Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Spiritual Spotlight series. Today I'm joined by Jill Brown. She's a certified evolutionary astrologer and owner of 8 Stars Company. Thank you so much, Jill, for coming on the Spiritual Spotlight series. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Rachel.
So, you've had an incredible path from NASA and Disney to evolutionary astrology. What inspired the leap from science to spirituality?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like so many people, there's these key moments in your life where fate or the cosmos intervene. And mine actually was really tied to my oldest daughter. I had gone through, I had been working at NASA. I was working for a big aerospace company, and I had my first daughter, and we were living in Charleston, South Carolina. And I had gone to get a reading because I'd never had one before, and I just thought it was interesting. No idea that I was booking with an evolutionary astrologer, just an astrologer. And she started telling me stuff about I have a Chiron conjunction. Chiron is conjunct my sun. It's part of a stellium. It's also the focal point of a yod. So she was like, wow, there's a lot of focus here on, um, breaking some generational trauma and all this stuff she was talking to me about. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And she was talking about past life and karma. And I kind of thought, I'm open to that. I don't know that I've really ever thought about it. Um, right around that exact same time, my oldest daughter, who was just under 2 at the time, um, one night I was putting her to bed, and she asked me if she could. Normally, I would read her a book and sing her a song, and she said, "Can I sing you a song, mommy?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be fine." And she started singing me this really kind of haunting song about being in the forest at night and navigating the stars. And it was, we're in the woods and it's dark, but we see the stars and we know where we're going. And at first, you're like a mom, working mom, very, very tired and sort of like semi dozing. And then all of a sudden, like every hair on my body stood up. And I was like, what is she singing? What is this? And so when she finished, I said, well, that was really beautiful. Where did you learn that? And she said, from my other mother. And I said, "Oh, your other mother?" And she said, "Yeah, I had a mother before you, but we were crossing a river and she drowned. And then I woke up and now you're my mom." I mean, just like that, matter of fact, I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I was very
This
cognizant
story.
in the moment, not make it weird, like to not ask too many
Yeah.
questions, but to just be like and I didn't even have all the tools that I have now, but something in me was like, just listen, don't make it weird if you start asking. So I was just like, oh, well, that's very interesting. And so then for the next about 2 years, she would talk periodically about her other mother. And it really opened this idea to me that we might have karmic carryover, that we might have past lives. She was being raised by, me and a nanny and my husband in and out of, when he was home with the Navy. So she didn't have access to anywhere else she would have heard these songs or stories or like
Yeah.
anything. And so it was just this pure vessel. And so I just got really interested in evolutionary astrology. And then my astrologer eventually said, I can't teach you anymore. I think you should probably go to school for this and get certified, probably to be like, stop bothering me, Jill. Yeah. And then, just down the rabbit hole from there, then it
Yeah.
was past life regression and hypnotherapy and all the modalities because it's just so fascinating.
I love the fact that you were open to hearing your daughter and thinking, okay, this is a thread that I can take with her, and being open to hearing about her past life experience. Like some other people would just maybe, no, you're just that's not true. And I respect that so much that you were open to her and that song, and that's so cool. Like you hear
Yeah.
about kids that, have this very vivid past life memory, and the fact that she was, like you said, an open vessel and you were able to bring it out of her, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was
I love it.
definitely kids are such teachers, and then I think especially for me, having children cracked
Yeah.
open a lot of things from my own childhood and was a lot of interesting growth
So
there.
true. So true. So this is actually new to me as well. So for those that are new to it, what is evolutionary astrology and how does it differ from what people typically see in maybe regular horoscopes?
Sure, sure. So there's so many types of astrology, and I think they all have really important, meaningful contributions. Evolutionary astrology is just a lens of perspective that we do have karmic memory. that we do have karmic carryover, and that when we analyze an individual's birth chart, there's certain markers on the birth chart that speak to what that past life carryover is. And for a lot of my clients, I always say if you don't believe in past lives, typically that past life karma will carry over into your childhood, your young childhood, that
Mm,
kind of formative, maybe to 5, 6, 7 years old. A lot of times that really replicates. So if you don't believe in past lives, I can just focus on your childhood and tell you a lot about your childhood. But usually those conditions carry over and kind of set up similar types of themes. And so that's the idea. We all have different types of karma. Some of them are things we did right, but they had impact and ramifications. I love the modern saying, intent and impact are not the same thing, right? My intent might not be to hurt you, but I could still hurt you and have an impact. And
true.
so there is effect from that. Another thing is something you did, in the name of something good, like you were, patriotic. So you wore for your country, or you were trying to save your home from, some Viking marauders, and you were protecting home and hearth, but you still caused injury to another human being.
Mm,
So that has carryover. And then there's also this idea of people who chose wrong, got wrong, willfully did wrong. That has carryover, right? It was a very intentful deceit or, maleficence. The last
mm,
kind is just your family had the timeshare in Pompeii, and that happened to be the weekend Vesuvius went off, and there was no right or wrong to that decision, right? You were just part of this force majeure that sort of had this very traumatic outtake, and so there's karmic
yeah.
memory that might have certain fears or phobias or things related to something in this life you can't really put a finger on. And so it's like, well, let's dive into that. Why are you afraid of flying when you've never flown before, or just things like that?
And so from these karmic carryovers, and you mentioned, a lot of different types of things that can carry over to this current lifetime. Are you able to identify those pockets of time, or is it just the emotion or the feeling that carries over with this karmic tie?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's typically more the theme, and less every once in a while gender will come through, although that's
Mm,
not always the case. And there's very strong gender marks, where you can kind of tell a gender, but typically it's more a theme and a storyline of what went wrong. And then to
mm,
go deeper, what I always tell people is a couple of things. One is I always recommend, after reading, people try past life hypnosis, because that can often help you focus in on it if you haven't
yeah.
had an experience yourself. The other is to look at time periods that you've always been drawn
Mm,
to, because oftentimes that is a marker of a significant period, right? I'll have people that, I did a reading for one woman a couple of years ago who was like, I was obsessed with the Titanic, obsessed. And she's like, but everybody was. And I was like, well, I can tell you from doing hundreds of these, not
no.
like zero real interest for me, like,
Yeah.
I mean, of course it's an important thing and everybody knows. She was like so in the weeds about every single detail. And I was like, you should probably look into that, right? Either,
Right.
maybe somebody you lost or somebody you were on it. I don't know. But I don't think that's as normal as you think it is, that's everybody's interest. So I always think that's interesting, because we do inherently have time periods we're very drawn to, and there's not carryover, right? Even from my own siblings, they have very different time periods that they're drawn to
Mm,
than me in history.
yeah.
And then the last piece is I always say places. So,
Oh, yes.
right? Like I've always wanted to go to Paris. I just want to go to Paris. I don't know why I want to go to Paris. Or I've always wanted to go to, I don't know, Nairobi, and I've never been to Nairobi, but I have to go to Nairobi. Like there's just these places that feel like oftentimes they're trying to call us back so that we
Mm,
can go back to that same soil, but be in this body, in this sovereign state here and now. So those are the kind of markers I tell people to try to hone in on your own intuition and work with.
right. I like that. I want to circle back to the lady on the Titanic. Did she happen to go back to you to say, like, yes, I had a past life reading, or did you ever hear back from her? Because I do have a story I want to share with you after you answer.
Oh my gosh. She hasn't. I've encouraged her. I think she's a little fearful
Nice.
because it kind of feels scary too, right? To go back to a very traumatic memory
Yeah,
that can hold people back.
of course.
Yeah.
So I actually do Akashic Records readings and I do quantum healing hypnosis. And my son, he's always been obsessed with the Titanic, always been obsessed with it. So when we did a reading, he actually was like a passenger on the Titanic. So that's fascinating. Now I'll be like, okay, now let's go to Jill, and you're going to get your markers. And what did you carry over to this lifetime that we can work on? But he's obsessed with the Titanic. And still to this day, he's 26. He's obsessed. Obsessed. So they need to get together. But you're right. But it's true. We're not like, yeah, let's go look up the Titanic. Like, it's just, but you're right. And I really like the fact that you're talking about places, because somewhere that I've always wanted to go is Germany. And I really I don't have any family connection there or anything. And yet I still took 8 years of German. And I'm like, now I'm going to have to get my evolutionary chart read and tell me why. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm like,
right.
I got to figure out what's the obsession with Germany. I'm obsessed. If anyone wants to send me to Germany,
No,
please do so.
right. And I think those are things we have to kind of the breadcrumbs we have to pay attention to, right? Because I'm the
Yeah.
same. I have a weird historical obsession with this very obscure group of like pre-Scotland but not Celtic people. It's a very niche time frame, and it's so random you can almost not find books on it. And I'm like, what is this weird obsession, right? And then my very first past life hypnosis
Yeah.
regression went exactly to that place. Like that was the first place we went. And so it was like, well, that's just, same thing with actually with Alaska. I
Wow.
think my past life regression therapist thinks that Alaska might be my oldest incarnation. Because when I
I
come
love
here, it
that.
is like home,
You feel at
it's like
home.
hmm
I
it was a
love that.
very
And
near
I
place to come to, and it's like
right.
it feels like it's soul. Yeah,
That is so cool. It is fascinating where you live and where you feel at home, and that's a whole other topic that we can get into. That, what is it, Carto something? I can never pronounce it, but I've looked it up. It's very
astrocartography.
interesting. Thank you. I'm like, I know what
Yeah,
it
this
is,
stuff.
but
Yep.
it's a weird thing to have to read. Like when you see those charts,
Yeah.
it's like, where do
Mhm.
I belong? I don't know.
Yep.
So back to you. So you center much of your work around Chiron, the wounded healer. Can you maybe explain what Chiron is and what does it represent in the natal chart?
Sure. So Chiron is a fairly recent astronomical and astrological discovery, only discovered in the late 1970s. And it is really interesting because it has the astronomy qualities of a comet and a meteor and a planetoid. And then now astrology has also incorporated that. And so it has these multifaceted meanings, both in the, scientific and astrology communities. And it's called Chiron, and it represents the place in your chart that kind of has your deepest core subconscious wounding or shame. And I think this is an interesting thing to me about evolutionary astrology too, is Chiron's not inherently baked into evolutionary astrology, but to me, there
Mm,
always in all the charts I'm doing, there seems to be a correlation, right? You have this experience that leaves a real marker, and then that tends to kind of echo and show up in your Chiron location too.
yeah.
Um, and it's just this idea that it's a place where you've always kind of felt harmed or different or other. And sometimes there's not always a real clear explanation again for why. And so you kind of think, why am I like this? Why do I stumble in this one place of my life? And so learning where your Chiron is can really help, because sometimes just shedding the light of awareness there can be really healing,
Yes.
right? Oh, okay. It almost gives you empathy for yourself. Like that makes sense. And then you're able to move forward. But the whole thing with the mythology of Chiron too is that Chiron is really from the mythology. He's called the wounded healer because he took his greatest wound and turned it into this thing that healed, humanity and mankind. And that's kind of the idea with Chiron too, is it's not just so that you get better and feel better, which it is, but then it's almost like this moral obligation to pay it forward and to help be a light
Mm,
to people and to help teach and to help speak and to help just, there's help others along their way who might be struggling in that same arena, so that they too have the opportunity to live a really full, complete life.
so to piggyback on that, you often say our wound is a doorway to our power. Can you maybe share an example of how someone turned their Chiron pain into purpose?
Yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of people will take so one thing I love about Chiron is if you do it right, it gives you profound empathy. So, like,
Mm,
let's say your Chiron is in, like, for instance, I had someone who had Chiron in Gemini, which is the wound of communication.
mm,
And when we were talking, I was saying, well, you've probably either felt like you speak different or think differently or whatever. And I remember the specific individual saying, well, actually, I'm clinically deaf, and I've had the implants and some other things to be able to um, you can't tell as much anymore through all the therapy, speech therapy, and some of the medical work that she had done. But she said I was born clinically deaf, and so I always felt different, and I couldn't speak, and I couldn't actually communicate. And so for her, that always made her feel a little bit less than.
mm.
She's extremely bright and intelligent, but it made her feel like she wasn't very smart, and like she just did everything so different. And so to come back to her Chiron and be like, wow, that's so nuts that my chart even says that. It must be part of my journey. And then she's able to actually embrace that about herself more and be able to work with other children and people in those capacities who are learning and who struggle with self-esteem because of their deafness, which is no indicator of intelligence or wit or
Right,
anything.
absolutely.
But it became like a self-esteem thing. So it really helped heal her. But then what I loved is that she took that forward. Like she would volunteer at her children's school because she knew with other kids that were struggling, because she had struggled as a kid in those
Mm.
capacities, right? To work with those kids. So yeah, it's a really cool story.
And I find that fascinating that it was the communication and her communication was limited. Like
Yeah.
that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So what do people often misunderstand about Chiron placements and how they operate in our lives?
I think that, well, there's two. One is just not knowing it exists, which is sort of like I'm on
True.
this campaign of awareness, like there's this thing and it's actually really important and you should find out about it. Um, that's a big thing.
Mm. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. I really, really like the fact that you brought that up because I do think there has been a tendency for people to get stuck, in maybe in this, well, this is what my Chiron says. This is what my natal chart says. Oh, I'm in my Saturn return. Oh, it's Mercury retrograde. And it's like, these are excuses. Like we need to tap in, go within, and look at what we need to do to heal ourselves to be able to move forward. And I'd be curious what you think about why do we sometimes get stuck on these kind of thought processes or belief patterns. It is hard. It is hard. That's been a new term for me. Yeah, absolutely. I will say that probably in the last couple of years, like radical awareness, radical responsibility, and really taking ownership of of everything in your life. Like I feel like it's a big thing to chew off, and to really own into it's. So I can see how occasionally you just want to put your head in the sand. You're like, I'm going to be gentle on myself for today, but then pick it back up maybe in a couple of days. Like I love talking to someone like yourself where it's like, oh yeah, I need to go back to that, because when you're exposed to something like the Chiron effect or, that, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember my Chiron's in this and I need to do that because I'm getting to mid age and I got to focus on it. I don't want to have I'm like, Jill, I don't want to have an affair. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's like, no, but it's a good reminder of, yeah, we've got to look at these aspects of ourselves and really tune in because I want to be empowered and I want to live a bold and audacious life and have the best possible life I can have. And I don't want to be held down by something like this. And I love the fact that you're offering these kind of tools. And another thing that you have is a beautifully structured Chiron course, which is really cool. So why is the structure so supportive in this deep soul work? And if you can tell us maybe a little bit about this course that you offer as well. It's yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, absolutely. Yes, this house and this and yeah. What? What a difference. Of course not. Yeah, yeah. 100% agree with you. 100%. And yes, 100%. And I like the fact that you were willing to take, well, you didn't have a choice, but that you did take another course in econ and look at he inspired you to minor in it. And it just goes to show you a good mentor When you use discernment and trust and guidance, will elevate you and not take advantage of you or make you feel less than. And that's a lesson in the spiritual community, because there are people in all communities that will take advantage of people. I do feel like when I'm looking for a reading, like if I want to come to you, I'm in a vulnerable state. There's a reason why I'm coming to you. It's not because I'm in a vulnerable state. There's something longing within me that I'm looking for answers, and people have to have integrity and treat their clients with respect. I don't know. Sorry, that was a side tangent there. Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And it brings me to my next question. So you bring lightness and joy to deep spiritual work. Why is it important to not take our healing journey too seriously? So am I. So am I. Healing can be lighthearted. So am I. 100 million%. So true. So true. I do respect that that's one of like your core tenets, because I do think that we get way too serious about the spiritual path. And it's like, okay, just take a beat, take a pause, like go watch Eddie Murphy, like take a beat. Like it's okay. There's healing in his jokes. Which kind of like brings me, because joy is a high vibration. And one of the things that you teach about is that shame is the lowest frequency that we can carry. How can astrology help someone transmute shame into strength? Yeah. Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And we also need to take the pressure off of who we were in that moment. That's how we responded or how we acted, and you can't change anything about it. You can just move forward. And I think we get too hard on ourselves. So I do like this. You emphasize cosmic accountability in your work. What does it mean? I know we kind of talked about this, but we're going to talk a little bit more. What does it mean to take radical responsibility for your soul path? A raincoat, an umbrella. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I really liked how you said it's just a forecast. Like, be prepared. Be prepared for the forecast. But things can change. Yeah, all the time. I'm really happy I have a really nice raincoat now. It was so funny. Like, I never had a raincoat like my entire life. And like in the last 2 years, I'm like, I'm getting a raincoat. And I love having a raincoat now. It's a really nice one too. I got off Amazon, guys, if anyone's interested. And it's bright orange. So you can see, I look like a cone and a traffic cone. So whenever you see me, but I'm prepared. I'm not a victim to the rain. So what are some maybe rituals or even maybe a journal prompt that you would recommend to maybe bring astrology into an everyday spiritual practice? Yeah. 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 I think that's perfect. And I think that's also a good doorway if this is something that you're looking to get into, like astrology, or even on your spiritual path. Like working with the moon cycles can have a profound effect on your life, and it's easy to start because you can look on your calendar, you can Google, and so many amazing resources for great new moon and full moon prompts. Like that's a great idea. I love that. And then yeah, or get this. It's so true. It's so true. I know I'll have a friend text me, go outside and look at the moon. Yes, ma'am, I will. Because it's like it's key to us. Take your crystals outside, charge your moon water. Like there's so much you can do for sure. Before I ask you the last question, if anyone is interested in scheduling a session with you or taking your course or learning more about you, where is the best place for them to go to? I will say, before I ask you the last question, I didn't realize how important it was until maybe like 6 months ago, because I have an app that I do like astrology in. It's called The Pattern, in case anyone's interested, and you run bonds on it. So I ran a bond for my partner and I. We've been together for 20 years, and it said like complex. And then I was like, and then I asked him, I'm like, what time were you born? And then, but the entire, so the reading at first was like, well, some of this is resonating, but a lot of it's not, like a lot of friction points and whatnot. But then I ran it again with his birth date and his birth time, and it was meaningful. And I was like, this is so different. And it was a completely different vibe. But I mean, honestly, like it was the same day, same place, but you are so correct about the time. I was, oh, what a change. So, yeah, right. This resonates. What a change. What a change. So now what I do is when things pop up, I'll snap it to him and he's like, "Yep, that's right. Yep, that's right. Yep, that's right." I love it. It's a good app. So for our last question, when someone finishes a session with you, what's the energetic shift or transformation you most hope that they experience? Same. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. It is true. Empowerment. It can be a double-edged sword, but it's so true. Like that's how you want to feel is empowered and embodied in your soul mission. And yeah, to have that purpose and clarity. Like, oh, maybe do this. I love that. I want to thank you, Jill, so much for coming on the Spiritual Spotlight series. This truly has been amazing. Connect with you today. Thank you so much.